Jasmine, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Good. Okay. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was okay, I guess.
Okay. Uh, now, um, did you do anything interesting?
No, I worked just about all weekend.
Okay, that's good. You earn money, right?
Yeah,
And money helps pay the bills. And I mean, I know we hate working weekends, but that's just life, unfortunately. And if you, I will tell you this, and I'm not going to try, I'm not trying to discourage you, okay? Um, so when I tell you this, please don't take it as a discouraging deal. In agriculture, weekends, as bad as I hate to say it, are just another day.
yeah, I know.
Because, in the wintertime, your animals have to be fed 7 days a week, right?
Yeah,
So, uh, if you're in agriculture and animal agriculture, you're working in the wintertime 7 days a week. Unless you're on an operation and you have labor to alternate out on weekends. Uh, Calving season or lambing season, you're watching them constantly. Now, most farms I worked on, we worked 6 days a week, or 5.5 days a week, except during the wintertime, in which case on Saturdays we did the feeding, and it would take us pretty much all day, or at least half a day to all day to feed. Uh, and the same thing on Sundays and calving season. You had to go through those cows and everything. So, it was pretty much a 7 day a week job once calving season hit, and it was pretty much a 7 day a week job once we started feeding. Most farmers, the thing about agriculture, at least in general with this profession, is farmers, you know, they'll they'll give you time to go to church because it's important to them as well. So you may go and start early, get your feeding done, or go to church and come back and feed or something. You know what I mean? Most times on the farms I worked on Sundays, that was it. You just did what you had to do on Sundays, whether it was feeding and checking, you know, checking the cows and the lambs that are cows and ewes that are calving and lambing. You just didn't do any more than you had to do on Sundays. And that's pretty typical because everybody needs at least a day off. Uh, Farmers are one of those few professions you don't get too many days off. And then in the summertime, you heard the old saying, you got to make hay while the sun's shining, right?
yes,
Preparing for winter. I'm trying. If you put up hay, you're trying to get the hay put up so you can feed it out in the wintertime. But typically, the farms I worked on, Sundays in the summertime we were off. We didn't do anything. Uh, we didn't put up hay or mow hay or anything like that. Now, if it was pressing and we had hay down and it was supposed to rain, sometimes we did come in and put up the hay on Sundays. But that was on very, very, very few occasions. We just didn't do it. Typically, you just don't do much more than you have to on Sundays. Now, veterinarians, uh, those poor guys work quite a bit. Uh, you know, and I'll tell you this, I'm just as guilty. I've called them out on Christmas Eve because of a colicky horse. I've called them out at 1 o'clock in the morning because a heifer prolapsed or we needed a C-section done. You know, Saturdays, Sundays, 0 degrees or 100 degrees. You needed a vet, you needed a vet. you know, uh, but, you know, I don't know how much other people called them as well, so I know one time I called a vet. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had a heifer. She prolapsed after she calved, and her whole uterus and everything came out when she calved. And I called the vet, and the answering service patched, or patched it on through, and he called back as before cell phones, and he said, I'm over here at another ranch delivering, putting in a C-section. I'll be there as soon as I can. Here's what you need to do until I get there. So obviously I wasn't the only one that had calving problems that night. That poor guy didn't get any sleep that night, I don't guess. He didn't leave us till about 3 or 4. But anyway, that's just life, you know. But he did save the cow. So, but but the thing with agriculture too, you can look back and see what you've done. You know, it's very it's a very gratifying job. You're up there all night, or several hours with the cow calving. Or you go out, you check your cows, and you got a cow calving. You come in, you get it in, and you pull it, or if it needs to be pulled, or you sit there and you watch it. And there's just nothing like that feeling of watching a new life come into this world. Or you be out fencing and you look back over what you got done for the day, or whatever. It's a very satisfying job to me, and I guess that's why I like it. I like dealing with animals. Uh, I just like it. But anyway, the we were watching a show this weekend uh, on RFD, and it's called Cowboy Country. And they were interviewing this rancher up in Canada. The show's based in Canada, talking about different ranches. And he was talking about a holistic approach of managing their ranch. And uh, he was talking about his grazing management. And one thing I don't know if I mentioned when we were talking about grazing management, but it dawned on me I better go back and make sure I mention this. Ideally, when we're grazing a paddock, we just want that blade of grass to be grazed one time. We just want it to be eaten one time, and the cow moves on, and then we move those cattle off as soon as possible so that that grass can regrow. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the better our root system is in that grass, the quicker it'll grow back. And the more that we leave standing, the quicker it'll grow back because it's got more leaf structure to do photosynthesis. So it'll grow back quicker and we can come back in and regraze it again quicker. Um, so I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Now, this guy was talking about not using fertilizer and herbicide, uh, brush spray and stuff on their ranch. And my wife said, "Do you teach that?" And I was like, "Well, no, not really. I do a little bit." Because, well, you need to teach that holistic because they may be interested in it. And it's a good theory, and in some parts of the country that may work. Okay, it's not going to work in all parts of the country simply because of the nutrient content of the soil. Like in my part of the country, man, phosphorus is weak. We have to add phosphorus, uh, and that's a fertilizer. And I don't know what the organic source of phosphorus would be, but uh, you know, you have to treat just like we have to feed our livestock to produce, we have to feed our soils for that for them to produce uh, grass. Now, I think through proper management of our pastures, we can reduce the use of herbicides tremendously, of brush spray. Once we get it cleaned off and we properly graze it, uh, we can reduce the cost of herbicides, and we may be able to eliminate them, especially if we have mixed species like goats to go in there and eat some of the stuff the cattle don't, or sheep, and have a mixed species operation. Um, and we're always going to have to come in there and check our pH level on the soil. pH is important uh, for the cation exchange, and I know that's getting into kind of some chemistry, but what happens if that pH of the soil is a little acidic, it can tie up whether or not nutrients get released, like phosphorus or calcium or potassium. It can tie that stuff up to where it's bound in the soil and the plants don't get it. So we have to pay attention to our pH and have to come in there and put some lime on there every few years. And then, of course, we need to watch our nutrients. Now, and keep adequate levels of phosphorus and potassium on our soils, and nitrogen if we don't have clovers, or legumes. And these organic farmers, they do it. I don't know how they do their fertilization, uh, the what their organic source of nutrients are. There's one guy up in the Shenandoah Valley, and he has mixed species, and so that's how he does it. He'll go in there and graze it with chickens, and use hogs and cattle as well, and helps with his soil fertility with that from that standpoint. But anyway, I just wanted to touch some more on great forage management. And we were talking about costs the other day. We're talking about the other day we're talking about health and vaccination schedules, and we started talking about how to figure up your costs for your economic analysis. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about this. Uh, Now, when we think about we have to have goals for our operation. And that's something I want you guys to incorporate. What are your goals for your operation? What are some of your production goals? Um, Now, I said that our greatest costs in animal production are feed costs, and that can be up to 70% of your total cost. The other costs that you have that's not feed costs are going to be with breeding, like artificial insemination drugs or synchronization drugs if you artificial inseminate, buying bulls, buying vaccines, uh, buying medicines, buying mineral, your fuel, uh, your labor, fencing costs, you know, any other cost incurred on the farm is going to be your non-feed costs. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So by, you know, I'm kind of working our way into reproduction, okay, in a roundabout way to let you know how important reproduction is. Now, uh, and I'm kind of debating whether to do genetics before reproduction. But when we think about uh, nutrition, there's an extension publication from Minnesota, and they're saying that for cows that go into the wintertime in good body condition, it costs less than for cows that go into the wintertime in poor body condition, uh, just feed cost alone. So, it's another reason why we need to have a good nutritional level and keep our cows in good body condition. Um, but you don't want to overfeed them. Um, but here's a little thing I wanted to go over on here. And I don't know how well you're going to see this on your board. Um, can you read that?
No.
I didn't think you could. Uh, and I don't know how to make it bigger. But I'll tell you where you can find it. It's under the production goals, beef production goals, and factors affecting profitability. These are the two places I've gotten this. But I'm trying to find out how I can make this bigger. Uh, if they to zoom it in, and it's not going to let me. Uh, but this is kind of a flow chart. Uh, I don't want to search. I want to get bigger.
You might could try pressing Control Plus on the keyboard, and most of the time that makes it zoom.
Control plus.
Yes.
Dang, woman, you know what you're talking about. Good job. I'm impressed. Can you see that now, or do I need to go bigger?
I can see it.
Okay. So, some factors that we measure stuff by, some crucial factors that we look at as to check ourselves on how good of a management deal we're doing. Everybody has different things, okay? Now, the top of this flow chart for this one from Minnesota is weaning weight per cow exposed. I have seen this one as number of calves weaned per cow exposed, and that's going to be looking at reproductive efficiency. You know, if you have 100 cows at the beginning of breeding season, and they are all exposed to a bull, right? And at the end of the fall, when you wean the calves that you have, you preg check those cows, and say you have 7 that turn up open, that didn't get bred, you sell those, and then you have down to 93 cows, right? That was bred out of those 100. Well, you get through the winter, and as bad as I hate to say this, it's just life. You're going to lose a few calves during calving season. No matter what you do, you're going to have a few that die. Or you're going to have at least one to die, depending how many cows you got. You can be the best you can be, and you're still going to have death loss. It's just life. But say you end up losing a few, and then in the summer, 1 or 2, you lose another one, coyotes, or somebody slaughters it, or it gets sick and dies, either poisonous plant, whatever may be the reason. But say you end up at weaning time, you wean 85 calves out of the 100 that you previously exposed. That is a standard goal of how many calves you wean per cow exposed. A good target to shoot for is 85%. Okay? The higher that number is, the better it's going to be for you. Okay? Because what happens if in your situation, Jasmine, you're selling weaned calves, and the more weaned calves that you sell, and the heavier they are at weaning time, the less money, or the less it's going to take you to break even. The less money it'll take per pound for you to break even. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Because you're going to have a break-even cost. How many calves you need to sell, or how many pounds of calves you need to sell at a certain weight in order to break even. So the more calves you have to sell, the less that price has to be in order for you to break even. Or the more that those calves weigh, the less it's going to have to be for you to break even. So as a producer, your goal is to sell as many calves as possible at, I don't want to say the heaviest weight possible, because sometimes we get strung out or get sidetracked on maximizing production. And I think we need to look at this economically and look at and use the word optimizing production. What is going to be the most economically, is it going to be worth everything we can do to these calves to get weight on them? And we could end up spending more money trying to put weight on them than we actually than what we get back. So we have to optimize that weight. You know, what can I do to get these calves? Where's the best bang for my buck to get heavier calves? Does that make sense? And not do everything that industry tells us to do. Like, you know, uh, there's stuff out there. You know, if we have fescue grass, there's certain minerals. There's a mineral mix we can use that will increase gains on fescue grass. It's got a certain drug in there or a supplement that offsets that fescue toxicity, that ergot poisoning from fescue. So, is that really economical? Can we get this a cheaper way? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. So, the number of calves weaned per cow exposed, that's a good goal for that would be 85%. Ideally, you want a 93% calving percentage. Like your cows that are pregnant at the beginning of calving season, you want to wean 93% of those calves. Um, and your cows should wean half of their body weight. So if you have a 1,200-pound cow, she should wean a 600-pound steer. And typically, heifers are going to weigh about 50 pounds less than steers. So, 550-pound heifer, 600-pound steer for a 1,200-pound cow. Does that make sense? We're not, if their cows aren't weaning half their body weight, we probably ought to get rid of them. So that's the reason we need to identify all of our cattle and keep production records, for another reason. So, now this flow chart, or another way of looking at things is, and this Burke Tykert guy I've discussed a time or two in class, he's all about low cost production, and he'll push those animals. And he looks at things a little bit different. And this flow chart kind of looks at things the way he looks at things. Instead of looking at how many calves per cow exposed, he's looking at the weaning weight per cow exposed, or how many pounds per acre he's getting. He's trying to put a cost to everything he's got. So what's it costing him per acre? How much money is he getting per acre? But looking at these are things that can influence your income. So your weaning weight per cow exposed is a major thing on your income, right? Especially if you're selling weaned calves. Now, your two main factors that are affecting this weaning weight per cow exposed are the number of calves that's weaned and the average weight. Would you agree?
Yes.
All right. So let's just take a look at the left side. If our weaning weight per cow exposed, it's influenced by the number of calves weaned and the average weaning weight. Let's look over here at the number of calves weaned. That's simple. The number of calves weaned is going to be determined by the number of cows failing to wean a calf, right? Now, the reason those cows failed to wean a calf are two reasons. One, the calf died somewhere between preg checking and weaning time. She either aborted it died at birth, or it died after birth. It died sometime before it was weaned. And the number of cows that didn't conceive, right? So we go back to those 7 cows originally that did not get bred. Now, the number of cows that lost calves, they can be broken down to gestation. How many of them got aborted or aborted during pregnancy, whether it was through disease or nutrition or an accident. They get hit hard or something. Losses at birth, calf died at birthing time, parturition. Gestation losses, very influential in herd health because of these reproductive diseases can cause abortion. Brucellosis, lepto, vibrio, trichomoniasis, or trick. They all cause abortions. And then the losses after birth, again, that goes back to herd health. It also can be due to an accident, poisonous plants, lightning, whatever it may be. Now we come over here to the cows that didn't conceive. 2 reasons: herd health. They've got some type of health issue that's not allowing them to breed, and that could be nutrition as well. Okay. Your mature cows that didn't conceive, do they have enough time to recuperate after calving? Did they calve late in the breeding season, and they didn't have enough time to recuperate and get bred prior to the end of breeding season? What was their body condition at breeding? What was their body condition at calving? If they were thin, they probably didn't even come into heat. And then looking at our nutrition. How's our nutrition prior to and after calving? Now, our replacement heifers, they're tough to get bred back. Those first calf heifers, because they're still growing. So they're growing, they're milking, they're recovering from calving, and they're trying to get pregnant again. They got a lot of stuff going on. And it's real hard to get those first calf heifers bred back. So, because you got age, weight, maturity, and again, nutrition. One thing sometimes we overlook on fertility, or the reason our cows didn't get bred, are our bulls. We need, every year prior to breeding, we need to get our bulls up and do a pre-breeding soundness exam. We need a sample of semen and to check the quality and the quantity of semen they're producing. We need to make sure they don't have any lameness, because if they're lameness, they may not be able to mate, or if they're hurting, they're not going to care about going out there to try to breed a cow. Okay, and we'll talk more about breeding soundness exams later. But the problem could be with their bull. They may not be producing enough semen to cover all those cows, or our bull. We got 100 cows. We probably got about four or five bulls. If we're AI, and it could be technique, with our timing of insemination, our technique, our semen handling, whatever it may be. So those are going to be the factors that's going to determine the number of calves weaned. Make sense?
Yes.
All right. Now, taking a look at our average weaning weight, Our average weaning weight is going to be dependent on the age of calves that are weaned when they're weaned, and how much they gained every day since, you know, what were their average daily gain from birth. Right? Make sense?
Yes.
So the older calves should weigh more, right? Because they're older. So that goes back to our theory of our cows calving early in our breeding season, having a defined breeding season, and having the majority of our cows calve early in that breeding season, so we get older calves so they weigh more. Our daily gain, that's going to be influenced uh, by several things. It's going to be influenced through genetics. It's going to be influenced by their health. If they're sick, they're not going to gain very good. But if they're healthy, they'll gain better. And it's going to be influenced by our milk production of our cow. You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Our daily gain is also going to be affected by the feed supply on our cows, their potential for milking, and their health. If that cow's not healthy, she's not going to milk. If we're not feeding her enough, she's not going to milk. If she doesn't have genetics for milk production, she's not going to milk. Make sense?
Yes.
In the first 3 to 4 months of that calf's life, it's coming from milk. They can't utilize grass because their rumen is not developed. They'll eat it, but they can't really, it's like you and me eating grass and trying to get nutrients from it. It's not going to work too good because their rumen's not developed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I just need you to understand this. So when we think about this flow chart, our goal is to have a good weaning weight per cow exposed. And what should that be? It depends, right?
Right.
You know, it's going to depend on several factors. How big our cows are, you know, uh, we want our cows to wean at least half of their body weight. Uh, but there's just some things in here, you know, we've got a lot of things in here we got to try to control in order to optimize this weaning weight per cow exposed. Because when we look down here to milk production of that cow, do we want a heavy milking beef cow? We want a low milking beef cow? Or do we want medium? And if you tell me it depends, that's going to be the right answer.
It depends.
It depends. Okay? And because what it depends on are your resources. You know, if you have a lot of grass and a lot of hay and maybe you raise some silage, you have those resources to feed those heavy milking cows, then you probably want some milk in your herd. If you try to get by just on hay, on good quality hay and grazing and try not to feed them more than you have to, you may not want as much milk production because that milk production, heavy, is going to require more energy, right? And
Right.
if you're not supplying that energy and she's producing a whole bunch of milk, she may not get bred back. But she may fall over here the following year. So you've got to pick cows with that meet your production, that meet your forage production. Are you seeing the big picture?
Yes.
Okay. So that's important. You've got to match up genetics with your forage, with your situation. You know, if we take a look at just selecting cat or bulls to re, to to wean off heavy calves, if that's what we're selecting our bulls on, we're going to end up in some problems because that heavy weaning weight is correlated with a heavy birth weight. So we have heavy birth weights, we may have a lot more calving problems, right? Because it's a bigger calf and they may get stuck. We may have some dystocia problems, especially in our first calf heifers. When we're talking about our replacement heifers and we're breeding those replacement heifers, and they're going to be having and they're yearlings when we breed them, and they're going to be 2-year-olds when they calve. We need to pay particular attention to that birth weight. They need to be low, or you know, not as heavy. Uh, but again, how low do you want it to go? Uh, you can get too low. You got a live calf, but you know he's small, and he may not make it because he's small, or he may make it and you got a live calf to sell. She squirted it out easy. She got rebred back, and that works for you. Everybody's different. So, I'm not going to tell you there's a right and a wrong. Everybody has different goals. Everybody has different resources. It's one guy I know, he puts a longhorn bull on all of his first calf heifers. Now he takes a beating at the livestock market because that's where he sells, at the livestock market. But the industry doesn't want longhorn cattle because they're just not very well muscled. But those first calf heifers, they squirt that long, narrow calf out, and he gets up, he nurses, and he takes off, and he has a pretty, they're a pretty hardy calf, and they live, and he gets them sold, but he gets those heifers bred back because it was such an easy calving deal, and they're not a very big calf draining down the energy contents of that cow. So it works for him. May not work for you. It doesn't work for a lot of people, but it works for him. And to be honest with you, I think he sells a lot of those calves just as a beef. Uh, I don't know. I don't know how much what he tells me is all correct anyway, but I'm just thinking. I do know he's going to take a beating at the livestock market. So does this help put things in perspective for you?
Yes.
The thing we want to do as beef producers, cow-calf producers, we want to lower our feed costs because that's our largest expense. And we want to optimize this weaning weight per cow exposed. We do that with the number of calves that we weaned, and we do that through how much those calves gain throughout the summer, or from birth to weaning time when we sell them. Is this helping you or just getting you more confused?
It's helping.
Okay, because we want to look at the big picture. Sometimes we get so hung up on little stuff that we forget to look at the big picture. And I thought that flow chart kind of shows us a big picture, or a bigger picture, keeping things in perspective. Because this is a business. We want to make money. Okay. Um, so moving on with that, I'm trying to think whether I want to go. Uh, I told you we would go into nutrition, or not nutrition. What I tell you? Uh,
Reproduction.
reproduction next. But I'm wondering, in all honesty, if maybe we should go into genetics next. Um, and I'll tell you why. Um, we were just talking about weight gain, um, and milk production, and maybe I think we ought to look at how we select our genetically superior animals for that, and then we go into then we kind of go into new reproduction. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Is that all right with you or not?
That's fine.
Okay. So when we think about genetics, how do you think, how do we pick out the genetically superior animals? What would be your guess? Or what do you think?
Um, I
What are
would
we going
say like the ones that would gain weight faster, maybe.
to? Okay. Uh, you're on the right track. Um, whether it's weight gain or carcass traits, um, we're going to look at the production, right? What's the production of that animal? Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Whether it's weight gain, carcass traits, milk production, um, whatever traits we're interested in, we're going to see what that animal has. So we can look at production traits of that animal. What else can we look at? Would the production traits of his relatives or of her relatives help us out
Yeah.
any? Yeah.
Yes.
So we look at the production rate, the production of the individual, the production of their relatives, their mother, their dad, their grandparents, their siblings. If they have any offspring, we can look at the production of them, right? Of what they did. So, again, we're getting back into record keeping um, to keep track of these production traits. Now, when we think about genetics, when we look at an animal and we see the animal there, right? You know, we take a look at a cow or a bull, we just see what it is. And what we see is a term called phenotype. Okay? Phenotype, it's determined by two things. It's determined by the genetic makeup, and it's determined by the environment. You agree?
Yes.
So if we're comparing two animals, say we're looking at two cows, and say they're both black, they're both don't have horns, uh, one's skinny, one's fat. What we do know is they're black, they lack horns, right? That's what we can see. We see one's skinny and one's fat. So we kind of put that body condition, maybe that goes to their environment. The black is genetic, right?
Yes.
The horns or lack of horns is genetic, right?
Right.
And the body condition, is it genetic or is it environment?
Environment.
And genetics. And or genetics. It can't be solely the environment. They could be twins. You have one, I have one. You fed yours, I didn't. Environment. Or they could be twins. Or they could be from the same herd and had the same feed access, but one's just that metabolism so doggone high, no matter what you feed her, she ain't gonna get fat. Right? We know people like
Right.
that, don't we? They can eat,
Yes.
they can go to a buffet and stay there for an hour and never gain weight. Right?
Right.
So, so it could be environment, it could be genetics, or it could be both. So the phenotype is what we see. And it's determined by the environment, and it's determined by genetics. Now, the environment, we can break down the environment in two ways. We can break it down into the unknown factors and the known factors. The unknown factors would include weather, disease, and parasites, uh, the feed, the quality and the quantity. Um, and then there's unique factors like, did the animal get sick? Did it get hurt and get behind? Got better, but then it's playing catch up. So those are things that when we look at an animal, we don't know, right? With the environment. Was it raised in Florida? Was it raised in Arizona? Was it raised in Montana? Was it raised in Virginia? Different environments, different, temperatures, different weather, temperature, humidity, precipitation. Um, so we don't know. We don't know how much it was fed. We don't know the quality of the feed it was given. We don't know if it was sick, if it had parasites. Was it vaccinated? We don't know if it was hurt. We don't know, all sorts of things. The known with the environment, we can know that if we've kept record, we know how old the mother of that animal was, right? When it was born. Uh, we know the age, we know the sex. Those are things that we do know, right?
Yes.
Uh, so some things we know, some things we don't know. So the genotype, that's just the genetic section of the or part of the phenotype is genetics, and what the genetics say, that's the genotype, that's the genetic makeup. Okay, so like if we look at a cow and she doesn't have horns, the phenotype says she's polled, right? But we don't know what the genotype is because polled is recessive. I mean, polled is dominant. Horns are recessive. So the genotype could be, it could be dominant for polled, right?
Yes.
Um, or it could be heterozygous for polled. It could carry the dominant gene. Well, this is for red and black. It's the same deal, polled and horned. Uh, but it could be homozygous. It could have the two genes for polled, or it could have one dominant gene for polled, and then the recessive gene for horns. Uh, or it could be, where's the one I'm trying to find? Or it could be the two. Well, it's not going to be the two recessive genes for horns because then it would be horns, right? I know
Right.
this is kind of mixed up right here. It's not the one I wanted to show you. Uh, but if we, this is doing black and red. Now black is prominent color, red is recessive. So if we bred, what it's saying, if we bred two black cows together, or a black cow and a black bull, and we didn't know what their genotype was, this is the way we used to have to do it before we had genetic testing. Okay, we would breed a black bull and a black female together, and we had a set. It we would have um, a 75% chance that it came out black. That should be a little b right here. It's a misprint. Uh, because the two big B's would give black, because we know both of two black animals carried at least one one of the alleles for black, the big B. But we don't know if they carried this little b or not. But if that calf came out red, then we know they were both carriers of the red gene. You had a 25% chance of that happening. Uh, what they would do actually was breed that cow or that bull to a red animal because you had a 50% chance of that calf coming out red if that bull carried the red gene. If they're trying to determine whether, say, like a mixed up bull, say like a Simmental Angus cross bull, if it was homozygous black, if they're trying to determine if it was homozygous black, they'd breed it to a red cow, and they had a 50% chance of that calf getting red. If it was red, then it was a heterozygous black bull. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So now we can do a genetic test do a DNA test and see what he carries. It's a lot easier now since we've mapped out the deal. But uh, there's two things we need to think about with genetics. There's quantitative traits, and quantitative traits are influenced by very few gene pairs. Kind of like what we just went over, red versus black, or horned versus polled. Okay, they're influenced by very few gene pairs. Qualitative traits, they're influenced by many pairs of genes. Uh, the way I keep that straight, qualitative you can measure, like weight gain, milk production. They're traits that can be measured. You can't measure whether a cow has horns or not. You can just see it, right? That's a quantitative trait dictated by very few genes. Qualitative traits, they're influenced by many genes or many pairs of genes. They show very continuous variations or gradual variation from one extreme to the other. And they can be influenced, and they are influenced by the environment. That makes sense?
Yes.
So it's hard to compare. If we're comparing two bulls, that's hard to compare if we don't, because we don't know the environment those bulls were raised in, right? One might have been raised in Montana, one might have been raised in Virginia. And so just looking at them, it's hard to tell which one's the better bull. So the tools that we use for trying to determine genetically superior animals they're called EPDs, expected progeny differences. And what they are, they're records for known sources, they're records that are adjusted for known sources of variations. So that differences are due to genetics and unknowns and the unknown environment, and therefore it improves accuracy. So if we take a look at phenotypes determined by genetics and the environment. In the environment, we have our known factors and our unknown factors. Genetics, we have additive and non-additive. So like with genetics, these additive and non-additive are going to be like those quantitative traits. They're black or they're red, they're horned, they're polled. Additive is going to be those qualitative traits that are influenced by many gene pairs. And and unfortunately, those are what we're going to get paid on. We're going to be paid on weight gain for our calves. We're going to be paid on carcass quality for our calves. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what we want to do, what these purebred breeders want to do, they want to limit the differences due to environmental effects as much as possible so that they get the best estimate of the true genetic differences. So with EPDs, what we're wanting to do is to eliminate the environment so we can just compare genetics. And that's hard to do, okay? But the industry, they've done a great job of trying to figure it out. And it's gotten pretty accurate. Computers are a wonderful thing. with doing math and taking into account stuff. But so some terms we need to look at: contemporaries. Okay, contemporaries are calves born in a similar time frame and raised together and treated alike. So if you had a herd of cows and your calves were born, all those calves were born within 2 to 3 months of each other. They were all under the same management system, right? Because you treated them all alike as one herd. Those are called contemporaries. Whereas if you compared that to my calves that I raised, your calves and my calves would not be contemporaries because they were managed two different ways. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So contemporaries, that information is important because it's used when we figure out EPDs as well. EPDs are, as I told you, they're called expected progeny difference, and basically it's telling us that we expect the progeny difference between two, it it's allowing you to compare two bulls within the same breed, but raised in different environments and under different health and nutritional programs. And it's going to be able to tell you the difference you can expect in their offspring when you compare the two bulls. So EPDs allow us to compare two bulls of the same breed, but raised in different environments and under different health and nutritional programs. All we're looking at is the genetic potential, or in this case, with the genetic potential of the bulls. Actually, we're just comparing the two bulls, and we're going to look at the difference in the progeny. So I'll give you an example here in a minute. So EPDs, they're reported in actual units. They're reported in pounds or squared centimeters for ribeye area, carcass traits. You can only use EPDs for within breed comparisons. So you can compare Angus to Angus, Hereford to Hereford, Simmental to Simmental. You can't compare the EPDs of the Hereford bull to the EPDs of an Angus. You have to, there's an adjustment chart that you have to do with those adjustments crossbreed EPDs. But EPDs are for within breed comparisons. You can do it a crossbreed. There's adjustment factors you have to take into consideration. But so typically you just look at it within the breed. The other thing you need to remember is EPDs change. And so as the more data that you collect from that bull's progeny, it can change. It can change for the better. It can change for the worse. The more information we get out there about it. So EPDs are a best estimate of an animal's genetic value for a particular trait at a specific time and given the information that's available at that time. So say next month in March, or it's almost March now, you buy a yearling bull, or you buy a bull with a yearling weight EPD, YW's yearling weight, he's of 70 pounds. Yearling weight is how much they weigh when they're a year old, okay? Weaning weight's how much they weigh at 205 days of age. Yearling weight is how much they weigh at 365 days of age. But say, for instance, his yearling, his EPD is 70 pounds for yearling weight. In '06, his mother raises another calf, and yearling data is collected in the following year. And in '06 as well, this bull's sire produces 3,000 additional calves, and their data is collected the following year. That data for next year, or the following year, it updates. All that's put in the computer, and that EPD is collected, or it's generated. All that information is used to update the genetic value for the dam to a small degree, and for the sire to a larger degree, because he's got more babies out. That makes sense? So his dad's EPD can change, and his EPD can change, because this bull's not proven. His EPD is based on what his dad's EPD is and what his mother's EPDs are. Does that make sense? Until he gets calves out there to prove his genetic value, it's just a guess. These EPDs are calculated on the performance of his mother, his sire, and the performance of their offspring. Because he doesn't have any offspring of his own. That makes sense?
Yes.
So it can change. And EPDs, they're crucial that accurate information is being reported. You can change EPDs by lying about the information, lying about weights and birth dates and everything. So you don't need to lie. Just be honest and go on. So EPDs, what they are, they're an estimate of how the future progeny will perform when mated at random to the average of the breed. That sounds a bit confusing, doesn't it?
A little.
Okay, so if we breed, say we pick out a bull that we like, and we breed, according to his EPDs, he's above average. So say we have two bulls, one an average bull and one a better, a good bull or a better bull. We expect that the calves from the genetically superior bull is going to be better than the calves from the average bull. You agree to that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Say, for instance, the yearling weight average is 0 pounds. Okay, so I breed half my cows to a bull that's average, that has a yearling weight of 0, and the other half of my cows to a bull that has a yearling weight of 70 pounds. I would expect that the calves from the bull with the yearling weight of an EPD of 70 for yearling weight, I expect those calves to be 70 pounds heavier than the one from the average bull. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just does that help explain this here? They're estimates of how future progeny will perform when mated at random to the average of the breed.
Yes.
Now, I told you that it just assumed it was the average is equal to zero. Real life, breed averages do not equal to zero. They change every year. So you're going to have to, you go to buy a bull. So you're looking at buying an Angus bull this year in 2017. You're going to have to look up what are the breed averages for each of the EPDs. And then 2018 is going to change again. They change every year. And it gets confusing, okay? It really does. But just know breed averages are not zeros. Breed average EPDs are not zeros. Now, another thing we see when we look at bulls EPDs, and we'll pull some up here in a little bit, is this ACC right here. That stands for accuracy. Accuracy is a measure of risk associated with an EPD. And it gives an indication how much an EPD may change as we get more data. So accuracy ranges from 0 to 1. And the closer the accuracy is to 1, the less it's going to change. So anything below 0.4 is going to be low accuracy. That bull can change, those EPDs on that bull can change tremendously. The accuracy between 0.4 and 0.8, it's moderate. It's going to change somewhat, but not as drastic as the low ones. And then anything above 0.8, it's not going to change a whole lot. Because there's just so much out there, so much information out there on that bull. So, let's talk about this a second. This is a very important statement. If you produce your own replacement females, the last 3 bulls used in your calf's pedigree accounts for 87.5% of the genetic makeup potential. So, should you skimp on your bulls? You raise your own replacement. Should you short yourself on buying an average bull? No.
No.
So those last 3 bulls that you used in that calf's pedigree, your replacement cows, that counts for 87.5% of their genetic makeup. Invest in good genetics. If it goes back to that flow chart, what's the genetic potential for that calf and that cow? So the value of your herd, it depends on the bulls that you use. Even with your herd, even though you're going to sell everything at weaning time and you're going to buy replacements, the buyers of your calves, you market them properly, they're going to know they're going to be familiar with the bulls that you use, or the sons of the bulls that you use, or the sons. The bulls you use may be sons of famous bulls. They're going to know the bloodlines. They're going to know what they produce, what they do in a feedlot. So that's important. So the herd depends on the bulls that you use. So when you go buying your replacements, you need to make sure you buy good quality cows. You need to buy them from a reputable source. Instead of just buying a good looking cow, you need to buy from reputable breeders that have good quality production cattle. Make sense?
Yes.
So if you're using registered animals, and I wouldn't recommend that, but at least you've got EPDs to go by. I don't know. If you got terminal cross, I wouldn't worry about registered. I sure wouldn't worry about a purebred herd. So, because what we run into when cattle are raised in a good environment, or even an excellent environment, it's hard to determine how much of an animal's superiority is due to nutrition, vaccination, and how much of it's due to genetics. Uh, so uh, we'll pick this up. We're out of time, so we'll pick this up Wednesday about genetics and EPDs, and go from there. In the meantime, I recommend you to read those genetic, look up in the genetic sections and read those on Blackboard. Do you have any questions? Do I have you
No.
totally confused about genetics?
No, I'm not completely confused.
Just a little murky?
It's not too bad.
Okay, good. It's not. I mean, when you first hear it, uh, if you're not familiar with EPDs and you first hear it, uh, it sounds confusing. Uh, but once you see a few of them and you understand how they kind of, in theory, how they work, it gets the water starts to get a little clearer. So read there's an extension publication there in the genetics section about from Virginia Tech about EPDs, and read that. That'll make it a lot easier for you. And I'll finish up his PowerPoint and go over that on Wednesday. And then we'll just look at some EPDs. That makes sense? Is that all right with you?
Yes.
Well, that's good, because even if it wasn't all right, we'd probably still do it anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks for the warning. You didn't get that, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just wasn't going to comment. All right. At least you're joking back with me now. That's cool. I'm glad. Hey, you have a good day.
You too.
Be careful.